welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Really quickly, before we get to this podcast, I want to thank our sponsor, Vortex Optics. They sponsor everything that we do here at eHunter. We're grateful for them and the relationship that we have with them. I know I say it every single week, but they're amazing. I hope you guys are utilizing their stuff. If you guys have any questions, make sure and reach out, ask questions, let us know how we can help with anything as it relates to Vortex. Also, on the podcast for sponsorship this month, we have Grim Reaper Broadheads. Super excited to start using those. Archery season is starting soon, so if you're wondering what broadhead you should be using, give Grim Reaper a look. I don't think you'll be disappointed. They're pretty amazing, and we got some great testimonials up on our social media about them, so check that out. So on today's podcast, I have Courtney Nally. He is a wildlife photographer, and you've probably seen some of his pictures. We've shared a lot of his pictures, and they are pretty amazing. So if you haven't, check him out on Instagram. You can even go through our Instagram and you'll see a lot of his pictures that we've been able to reshare, repost of his. So Courtney's a great guy. He lives in Washington and he's surrounded by some amazing wildlife. So I'm super excited to have him on the podcast. Guys, before we get to that, remember, subscribe to the podcast. Please share it around. And if you guys would, if you go on to like Apple Podcasts and leave us a review, leave comments, that kind of stuff really helps us out as far as getting our podcast to the top of the list. So if you guys wouldn't mind doing that for us, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support of eHunter. And don't forget to check out the website, ehunter.com. Check us out on social media, including TikTok now. So, all right, guys, without further ado, let's jump into the podcast with Courtney Nally. Hey, guys, welcome back to the eHunter podcast. I've got a special guest on with us today. My guest today is Courtney Nally. He's, you guys have probably seen a lot of his pictures on our website. Well, I know you have. If you've been on eHunter, you've seen pictures of his. If you've been on our social media platforms, we share a lot of his stuff because it's pretty freaking amazing, to be completely honest. So Courtney, welcome to the eHunter podcast. How you doing, man?
Doing good. I appreciate you having me on.
Dude, I'm excited for this. Love what you do. Love the pictures that you take. I'm a little bit of a wildlife picture junkie. I've got like 7 or 8 people that I'm like dedicated. Like I always like when I go into Instagram, I always look for your guys' stuff because I love those pictures. So if anybody hasn't checked out Courtney's stuff, check it out. We'll give his information out at the end of the podcast. But Courtney, before we get into it, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind giving the listeners a little introduction? Tell everybody who you are and what you do and things like that.
Yeah, so I'm Courtney. I've done wildlife photography for about, I'd say 6-7 years now. Realistically got into it hard 4 years ago, where it took over pretty much everything I do. But yeah, I'm out of Eastern Washington, Moxie, Washington, to be exact. And yeah, I just kind of do wildlife photography. I'm a licensed realtor here in Washington. So that's kind of what I do as a career. It gives me a little bit of a leeway to go travel and work remotely and get stuff done at the same time. Can't really show houses on the road, but you get the paperwork done.
That's a pretty good area to live in for wildlife photography, isn't it?
It's not bad. I mean, we have around here where I live is mainly big bulls, big bull elk. You'll see me posting a lot more here lately of trail cam videos of some of the bigger bulls in the area.
Yeah,
I've turned up. There's bigger than that, but
dude, that one that I maybe you posted multiples, but you posted one. I think it was yesterday. Dude, that thing was ridiculous.
Oh, the typical 7x7.
Yeah, that's ginormous.
Yeah, that thing showed up once. That's the only video I have of him. Then he left.
Wow.
I was like, well, that was a good show for what it lasted.
Hey, I take it, man.
I have one I haven't posted yet. He'll probably get posted after the season. We'll see. He's big. He's about 405, 410.
Good
so
night.
He's a good looking bull. He's bigger. One of the bigger bulls I've ever gotten cam. So I've been bringing my camera in there, my actual professional camera, to try and get photos of him. And yeah, he's an escape artist. I don't know what he does and where he goes. So
I would imagine he's probably pretty nocturnal. You know, I'm sure he doesn't come out a lot during the day. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the videos, so I've gotten, I think 5 videos of him ever. June 9th, he showed up, and then he just showed up the 19th, full grown. He's hardening up now. So that's how I kind of got the good picture of what he looks like. But it's been in the daytime, but he really likes to stay in that dark timber. So that cam's actually specifically set in the dark timber because a lot of those bigger bulls, they run 15 to 40 yards in that dark timber following burn lines and just meadow lines. They don't like to come out in the meadows very often. I mean, I got him in the meadow, but he was cutting across like a pinch point to another thick piece of dark timber.
Dude, they know what they're doing. They know exactly where they need to be, what they need to do. I mean, they wouldn't be that big if they didn't.
Those big boys, they're smart. They know. Yep, they know exactly what they're doing.
What other animals do you have up? I've never been. I've never actually even been to Washington State. I know.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what other animals do you guys have up there?
So we have pretty much everything. Mule deer up north, farther from me, about 2.5 hours or so. We have the whitetail. Down in the blues, we have pretty much everything: mule deer, elk, whitetail mixed. A lot of bears in that area also. A lot of bears around this area up in central Washington. Cougars, I got a couple cats on trail cam, but never been able to photograph one in the wild. But yeah, I mean, pheasant, quail, if you want to take time and photograph those.
Yeah.
That's more of like you see them on the side of the road with a cool background and you stop the car and jump out and photograph real quick and then keep going.
Dude, when we try to find pictures for our articles and whatnot, mountain lion is the hardest animal to find pictures of. I mean, they are so elusive. Not many people get pictures of them.
No, I mean, you don't see wild photos of them. It's pretty rare. I mean, if they're treed, then that's a little bit different story, which I'd love to do that one day. But
hey, come on down, man. I've got cousins that tree cats all the time. You got to come down and take some pictures of them.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to fly down there one of these days during the winter.
Yeah.
Get some snow photos.
Dude, that'd be awesome.
They're just hard. I mean, you just don't see them very often. Usually we'll see a couple a year if I actually do shed hunting or if I run my cams early enough, you'll see them out wandering around, but just not much.
Yeah.
Not like I'd like to.
Yeah, see, I pick them up on trail
my camera.
cameras a lot more than I ever see them. In fact, I've only seen just a few out in the wild. Definitely couldn't get a picture of them, but yeah, I get them on my trail cameras. They come in quite a bit and I live in the desert, so there's quite a few of them.
Yeah. Are they following like elk herds, deer herds out there, or what are they following out there?
Most of my cameras are set up on water, so they're coming in for water.
Oh, gotcha.
In the desert, because I'm sure up there where you're at, there's water everywhere. But in the desert, there's only so many places they can come to get a drink, and so you'll set it up on a pond or a guzzler or spring somewhere, and then they'll come into that water and get a drink. So you'll usually catch them there.
Okay. Yeah, we have quite a bit of water, so they're mainly following the cows and calves around up here.
Nice.
Is when you'll catch them. They'll be in there in a big herd, and then 10 minutes later, you'll see them walking through.
Dirty little buggers. Gosh. That's awesome. Do you do a lot of traveling to take pictures?
I do. I try and travel at least 3 to 4 states a year.
Wow.
So I like to do Colorado is my main one that I do. That's a gimme. I plan everything around that one. That's because it's the mule deer and the whitetail rut.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I get a lot of my mule deer and whitetail photos. I do get some in a couple other states, but not like the caliber you see in Colorado.
Right.
And stuff like that. But Montana's another one that I try and hit. Bighorn sheep up there, mule deer up there, couple elk. I don't really specifically chase the elk up there. And then Utah, if I'm driving through Utah, I'll make sure to hit that area. And then Oregon, Wyoming a little bit. Usually Oregon and Wyoming, I'm just driving through, and I'll hit areas that I know where some bucks are.
Gotcha. Do you ever go like east of Colorado and do like whitetail pictures out that way, or turkeys or anything like that?
I don't. So I do go a little ways east, probably 2 hours or so out of Denver, 2.5 hours. Well, I'll go east, but I don't get way out there. So.
Gotcha. I wonder because I look at it, like I said, I look at a lot of photographers' pictures, and there's no way they're getting all those pictures in one state. So I wondered if there was a lot of travel involved, and is that like, do you plan your vacations around that, or is that like your wife knows that, hey, during November I'm going to Colorado for the deer rut?
Yeah, so Colorado, she knows. She's like, I'm not planning anything up until Thanksgiving. I'll be home the day before Thanksgiving is usually when I fly back, so I can be with the family and stuff for Thanksgiving. But other than that, I usually take about a week and a half, and I'll fly. She'll actually drop me off at the airport, and then I'll fly out and rent a car, rent a SUV or a truck, depending on what the weather forecast is.
Man.
But yeah, I mean, then a lot of the other times, so at least one trip a year, we'll do like a 10-day trip, sometimes 14, and we'll travel. We'll go up like north to like Canada, or we'll go to Wyoming and stuff like that and spend 10 to 14 days or so traveling around together. So then she gets to go on a nice vacation every year with me.
That'd be kind of fun. I think my wife would love that if I put a camera in her hand and said, we're going to go take pictures of wildlife. I think she would be down for that.
She probably would. The only thing is, there's one tip, is you got to edit some of their photos to make them feel like they did something. I don't do that very often. I'm like, it's all about my photos. Yours can wait, and then I never get to them.
That's awesome. That's actually, honestly, one of the biggest questions I have for you tonight or today on this podcast is the editing process. And I was actually going to wait until after we already talked about it, but since you brought it up, if you don't mind, let's kind of dig into that a little bit, because I can't imagine. Okay. I mean, I'm sure that and we'll talk about your camera and kind of what you do there. But I mean, the photos that you put like on social media, does that require a lot of editing, or is that pretty raw?
So they're actually, most of them are pretty raw, unless I've had to cut out like a small fence or something like a wood fence or railroad tie if they're crossing through like some property. But a lot of them are pretty raw. I think I've only posted one where it was actually, I had to kind of doctor the buck actually blended in with the background. So I pulled him. I did some pushing and pulling in the background and on the buck to really get him to pop out from the background. That's a lot more work than I ever want to. For editing, I like to get my photos done, and if I can edit them in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I'm happy.
Oh wow, okay, so it's not that bad per picture then, just a couple minutes.
Yeah, I mean, because I try every shot that I take, and I used to not. I used to just click away and be like, I can edit later. Now it's like I actually take my time. I set up the composition and the contrast, the background, and really set my subject apart from that background to make him pop. And then it just creates a lot less editing in the long run.
What program do you use to edit?
I use Photoshop. I've tried Lightroom. I'm terrible at it. It's a lot more confusing. I know everybody that says Lightroom, that does Lightroom, they're like they say the same thing but for Photoshop. But I learned on Photoshop. I just watched a bunch of YouTube videos till I learned the way I like to edit, and then I kind of made my own editing style.
Gotcha.
So that's what you kind of see, like when you're on social media, you'll see pictures of some of the same bucks, but they look completely different, and everybody has just a different editing style. Sometimes they're using Photoshop, they're using different layers to push and pull, like the shadows, the backgrounds, and stuff like that also. Removing some brush in front of them, and even just standing up or even kneeling down or even laying on your stomach can completely change a different composition and contrast of the photo from someone standing 3, 4, 5 feet away from you.
Gotcha. Gosh, this is so complex. We're only like 5 minutes into this podcast, and you're already
I know,
complex
right?
on me.
Well, last year, me and my buddy were shooting next to each other. We're standing 2 feet apart, pretty much shoulder to shoulder, photographing the same buck. And he's like, "Hey, there's a fence thing in the background." I'm like, "Well, lay on your stomach." So we're both sitting there laying on our stomach, and the fence is out. It just completely changed a different contrast of what it would look like if you had to edit a fence out and be almost eye level. I do like to be eye level with the wildlife, if you can be. I mean, birds, it's pretty hard, but bucks, bulls, bighorn sheep, if you can be eye level. But sometimes just dropping down to a knee can completely change the foreground look of that animal and set yourself apart from what other people are taking at eye level and stuff like that.
So like when you're
then it makes it a lot easier for editing.
Oh well, yeah, definitely. So like when you're laying down on your stomach and stuff, are you using a tripod to take these pictures? I mean, that'd be kind of tough, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I would. I actually take it off the tripod and lay down and just hand hold.
Wow.
And sometimes you click off roughly 4, 5, 6 photos, and then you drop it down, because when you're shooting a 400, 500, 600 millimeter lens, those things are heavy, 6, 7, 8 pounds.
Yeah.
So you can only hold them for so long up to your face before you're like, okay, I'm tired. or if you're like me, you don't think and you hold your breath. So you're sitting there trying to almost passing out, taking a picture of a deer.
Well, that's what we do when we're, laying down looking at a deer, or an animal. We hold our breath like we're gonna shoot it. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. I've always wondered how much editing goes into the pictures. And I'm actually looking at some of your pictures right now, and that's amazing if that's just a lot of raw footage, because some of these pictures, oh my gosh, are absolutely amazing. So let's talk a little bit about your equipment. I think that's
okay.
I told people that I was going to be doing this podcast with you, and everybody's like, I said, what questions would you guys ask, or what would you be interested in? So many people want to know about equipment, because I mean, there's a plethora of cameras out there. There's a plethora of lenses out there, and I know that all of them probably would work in different combinations. But let's talk a little bit about like what you use, what you recommend, what you suggest. Maybe someone's getting into wildlife photography, what you would suggest. Let's just kind of talk through that. So let's start with that. Well, actually, let's start with what equipment you use.
So I'll start out like with what I first started with, just when I really got into photography.
Okay.
And I started with Canon gear. So I was and I'm the kind of weirdo that if I have Canon, I want all Canon.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
It's like if
I
you
don't
have
like
camo,
to change stuff up.
you want to have all the same camo.
Yeah, I get weird like that. So everything's got to be the same. So we'll start out. I use Canon. So back 4 years ago, I was using the Canon 7D Mark II, which isn't some high-end, crazy, fancy camera. It's just your typical DSLR. It was a flagship camera 6 years ago. And at that time, I'm just using a 400 millimeter 5.6 prime. It's about a $1,200 lens. There's no image stabilizing. So you either want to make sure you're on a tripod or you're running a really fast shutter speed, because you'll pick up that vibration. Your images will come out kind of soft or fuzzy. And then I've slowly kind of upgraded. I got out of Canon a little bit, and now I'm actually with Sony. I shoot the Sony A7R4, the A9 II, and I'm looking at some of the newer stuff that they've come out with. But yeah, that's out of most people's price range.
I was going to say, some of that stuff is ridiculous.
Oh my goodness. You look at it and you're like, how do people afford this every year to upgrade?
Yeah.
But they do.
Yeah.
Me, I'm like, I get used to the camera I'm using. So the A7R4, for instance. Uh-huh. And I'm like, I learn it inside and out. So then when you're on the move, you could be running and you're just clicking buttons, already setting stuff up, ready to go. So when you're ready to jump down to a knee or put it on a tripod and shoot a bugle and bull or something, you know where you're at and what your settings are. Mm-hmm. So if you do have to change anything and fine tune it, you're not sitting there looking at the screen.
That's nice.
But yeah, so I use Sony, and it's the lens I use with Sony is just the 200 to 600. I don't remember what I paid for it. It's about a $2,000 lens or so, but they have tons of lenses and they're actually really good price. And people are like, oh my goodness, $2,000 is expensive. But if you're taking a trip and you don't want to pay that price, you can rent. You can rent a lot of those lenses, and I highly recommend renting every piece of equipment before you actually even go out and buy it.
Where in the world do you rent camera equipment at?
Lens rental. I rent everything from Lens Rental online, and they're good. They ship super fast. Usually you get it you'll tell them, like, I want it there on the 16th of November. They'll usually get it to you by the 15th, so then you can set it up, play with it, and then use it for however long till you have it rented. And that day, then you send it back through UPS or FedEx. I can't remember. I think it's FedEx. And yeah, the shipping's free back. I mean, you kind of pay with it in the price and stuff. Mm-hmm. And that saves you so much money. I'm talking when you rent an A7R4, the Sony A7R4, and say a 200 or 600, which I did before I even bought it. It was only like $350 for 9 days.
Wow. So for like the
that
casual,
saves people a ton of money.
Yeah, for the casual person that's out there just taking pictures, man, it'd almost be worth it just to rent the stuff and use it for a week or so, and then send it back. Of course, I guess you would never get like familiar. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot to do with these cameras and lenses, and I'm sure it takes a lot longer than a week to get really familiar with them. But I mean, that's pretty awesome that you can do that, and it's awesome that you can try them out before you actually spend the money on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing is if you can try them out and see if it actually fits your style. Sony is a lot more complicated. Every little button on that thing does probably 3 or 4 different things, it seems like. So I try and set it up the basic. So when I rented it, the very first time I ever rented it to test it out, I had YouTube up and put, I think I typed in A7 Sony A7R4 wildlife setup, and then I just copied someone that was a wildlife, pretty known wildlife YouTuber that does a lot of that stuff, and I set my camera up according to what they did, and then throughout the week I just made like small adjustments of what I remember, like when I was coming from Canon, of what I liked and stuff. Like the eye tracking is awesome on those Sonys. That's one of the biggest reasons I switched. But I mean, I highly recommend renting because you can see if it's really for you.
Yeah.
And you're only $350 instead of $6,000 or $5,000 into a setup that you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to use this like 3 times a year, when you could have rented it for under probably $1,000 for the whole year, or for your different trips.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is like for the people that maybe take 2 or 3 trips to go take pictures, yeah, you're less than $1,000 to go do those trips. Don't have to spend the $6,000 to $10,000 for the camera. I mean, that's a pretty sweet deal.
It is. I mean, yeah, lens rental, and I think there's borrow lenses or something is another one. I've never used them. I know they're pretty well known too, but I use lens rental. And the cool thing is, say you like that camera so much, well, at a used price, they will actually sell you that lens and that setup if they're ready to sell it. So you could end up just keeping it and saying, hey, just give them a call saying, hey, you know what? I like this setup. Can I buy it right now?
Oh, man. Yeah,
I mean, you are getting a used piece of equipment, but you used it, you tested it out, say, for a week. It worked flawless. You absolutely love it. Then you could buy it for even a better price than buying something brand new. You might save 10, 15%.
Yeah.
But 10, 15% for the next trip, that's gas.
Exactly. And it's something you've already gotten familiar with. You're already using it. You love it. Like you said, you've tested it out. You know that it works well. There's no problems with it. I mean,
yep.
Yeah, that's a pretty sweet deal.
When they go through and they'll grade like the cameras, or say the lens, you want to buy a lens from them that's used, they'll grade it, say an 8+, and they're pretty conservative. So when you get an 8+, that's like good condition. It's actually like great condition. There might be one little tiny nick of the paint on the lens, and that's it. So it's like, holy smokes, and you just got it for a cheaper price.
Yeah.
So they're pretty well taken care of. They go through them really good, but they sell through. Lens rental sells through Lens Authority. So if you go to Lens Authority, that's their page where they sell everything.
Gotcha.
And I've bought tripods from them, Gitsos and Enduro. I think it's an Enduro tripod. I think that's what one of my tripods are. And I bought that for, I think, 50% off, and it was mint condition.
Wow.
So
I don't even know about this website, so I'm like geeking out right now.
You're gonna have to put a link on there.
Yeah, in fact, that's a good idea, Courtney. I'm gonna put that. I'll put a link in the show notes to this website. I'm actually looking at it right now, and I'm geeking out on it because I'm gonna get me a camera coming.
I'm gonna rent this.
Yeah. So like, if someone's wanting to get into it now, like you said, you talked about what you bought and what you got into it. Like, if someone wanting to get into wildlife photography. Wow, if I can say it, photography right now. Like, what would you recommend that someone use?
So I get that question a ton on social media, mainly Instagram, of what do I use or what do I recommend? And I just kind of say like, hey, what have you kind of used in the past? Because maybe all they really want is a point and shoot camera. Maybe they need something a little bit bigger, that a little bit more reach and stuff like that. So I'll recommend certain like brands. Like, so if they like Sony, I'll go to like the Sony A6400. That's an incredible starter camera. Nothing too crazy fancy on it. It's light, it's small, it's compact, and you still got a lot of the features that all the newer cameras have. It doesn't have like the crazy megapixels and stuff like that, but realistically, it's not needed. If you're getting started out, you want something that you're not going to be like overcomplicated and be like, oh, okay, this isn't fun. This is way too much work. You're going to want something a little bit more basic. And that's why Canon and Nikon are a lot more basic cameras. There's not a bunch of stuff into them. So you got the Canon A7, or not the A7, you said Sony, the Canon 7D Mark II, and stuff like that. I'm trying to think of the other T7, the T7i, I think is what it is. That's another great camera to start with. I mean, those are like starting at the bottom. Those are $600, $700, $800 cameras, but they do a lot. They do a lot more than they probably should for that price.
Yeah.
So you're getting actually a pretty good bang for your buck.
And they're DSLR, do picture, video, and all that stuff too, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And I think the A7s, they have like the flip screens, I think, on those. I mean, they're
Nice.
pretty, they're nice. They're nice setups. And that's another one I highly recommend. It's got 24 megapixels. I mean, you just
Wow.
can't go wrong with a lot of the DSLRs. So if your budget's $500-600, look at a cheaper DSLR, or even look at used and go on an eBay and look for people that have 99.7 or 100% reviews
Uh-huh.
and buy something used. You're going to buy those things for 50% off. I mean, I'm seeing them for sale for $400, $350, and that comes with a small couple lenses, kit lenses, but
That's probably the way to
they
go for
work.
someone that's just trying to get into this. Find something used either on eBay or even the lens sites and the use or the
Yeah.
renting sites, and that probably be the way to go. I mean, it's nice getting something new. Don't get me wrong. And if that's what somebody wants to get, if that's your bag, yeah, go for that. But man, if you can get something
Yep.
used and that works perfectly, you can probably get something pretty amazing at a decent price. I would imagine most people's price range wanting to get into it is probably that $1,000 range if you're really trying to get into this, and so it sounds like those are pretty good options if you're in that price range.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people are like. I have about $1,000. $800 to $1,000 is about the price point of what most people are when they're trying to get started into it.
And really, I think it's the lens that's actually the pricey pieces, right? And I guess the only reason I know that is because Monty, he's with us in eHunter. He's
Yeah.
taking pictures. I mean, he's a pretty big photographer himself, and that's what he always says. The camera's one thing, and you can get a camera for $1,000. He says, but it's then you got to add the lens on top of it. And he says, well, if I remember right, I think he said you can't find a really good lens for under 1,000. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, it did. Yeah, yeah, it is. There's no
I love how
argument.
you're gonna try
I
and
mean,
brush that off, but you're like, no, no, yeah, that's true.
I don't want to scare people away.
Yeah, but
There's $400 or $500 lenses out there that are going to do great. It's, but you just get a little bit better. I think filament in your lens and stuff like that. It's a little bit sharper. They're crisper and everything in a little bit higher quality of a lens. Like one of my lenses that I used for years, up until just a couple years ago, was a $1,200 lens, the 400 millimeter 5.6, and you could buy those for $750 online now.
oh wow,
That's a 400 prime. That's got some reach to it, and that's so I have like the great gray owls and stuff
yeah,
like that on my page.
yeah,
Those are all with a 400 prime, a $1,200 lens, and the 7D Mark II, which was I bought it. I think it was like I don't remember $1,200 for the body, maybe a little bit more, but.
wow,
Um,
yeah, those pictures are
Now
amazing.
the stuff I'm using now is a little bit more expensive, but I mean I've used the 500s and 600s, which I don't recommend those. Those are getting up there in price
Yeah,
unless you have
maybe
money to blow.
yeah. Say either you got money to blow, or you've gotten into this and found that this is something that you absolutely love and want to get into. What's
Yeah.
the reach on those? You talk about reach, and looking at your pictures on your page, I mean, it looks like you can reach out and touch these animals with a stick. I mean, I'm guessing that they're a lot further away than that. Like, how far can you get with these lenses?
So when I'm running my 400, I tell everybody I'm usually within bow range.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I'm 25 yards, sometimes I'm 45 yards. Bull elk, I'm about 50, 45 to 60,
Oh,
right
wow.
around that range. If you go portrait format, you're usually pretty close because you can't fit the whole like the legs and everything. So you go portrait, so you're within 40. But yeah, I tell everybody I'm usually within bow range. A lot of these animals. Sometimes, so now that I have the Sony, that 200 to 600, I could be a lot closer if something happens to walk by me or walk up to me, which I've had that
Uh-huh.
on mainly mule deer or some depending elk and stuff like that. They kind of look at you and figure out what you are. But yeah, they'll get pretty close.
Wow.
20. I don't usually like to get 25 yards or closer. I mean, if they walk up to me, then that's different. I usually try and stay about 25 yards, sometimes 30 yards away.
With those cameras, can you reach out there 100 yards and still get a good crisp picture?
Yeah, so like on the Sony A7R4, I think it's I'm running I think it's 60 megapixels. So
Uh-huh.
I can crop those in actually pretty tight and keep a lot of pixels. With
Wow.
my Canon setup, I really couldn't. I'd have to be 55, 65 yards max, especially on mule deer to keep decent quality. But there's some editing softwares out there now that are just incredible. It's called, like, one of them is called Topaz.
Uh-huh.
That'll actually help sharpen up or denoise a photo, and I've used that to kind of help crisp up an image. Sometimes it doesn't do great, and sometimes you're like, holy smokes, this is usable. I can actually use this.
Wow,
But that's another editing software that you could run it through and filter out some of the stuff.
So when you're taking these pictures, you're almost like hunting then. Like you're sneaking in on these animals. You're getting pretty dang close to them because it looks like they don't even know that you're there on most of these pictures.
Yeah. So yeah, I treat it pretty much like hunting. That's why a lot of my buddies, they make fun of me. They're like, "Oh, you gave up hunting." I'm like, "Yeah, but I get to shoot multiple bucks a year."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm stalking.
And go back the next year and shoot them again.
Yeah, exactly. And they're usually bigger. You do it for years and years. But yeah, so I treat it like a hunt. I mean, sometimes you're in areas where the deer are pretty calm and relaxed, but there's another area you have to really actually wait till the rut to get close to these bucks. They're just so spooky.
Yeah.
But you just start sitting on them, letting them. That's what I do is I let them work me, get used to me, run the does around, and once they start warming up and know that you're not a threat and you're not making any like sudden movements, they'll get pretty close. I mean, some of them won't get, like I photographed that big typical last year.
Yeah.
And I think I only had him once. That was, you're like, oh, okay, this is getting pretty close. The other times he's 350 yards out there. So you're just watching him rut 350 yards out and just hoping that he makes a mistake or the does do and run them towards you.
Wow.
Because, I mean, you're out in flat land. You're not going to get close to them without spooking them. So you just kind of set up and watch them. I watched some of the bucks for 3, 4, 5 days before they actually make the wrong move and walk by you, and the does do, or they warm up to you and just like, okay, you're not a threat. So
like bighorns, like I've never gotten that close to bighorns like you had. Like some of these pictures, if you're 50 yards on some of these pictures with bighorns, man, you got to be pretty sneaky.
yes, some of the bighorns, you really have to let those warm up to you. They get kind of, they're big.
Yeah.
They're a lot bigger than they look like. Sometimes in person, you're like, holy smokes, that's a big animal.
Yeah.
But I was photographing bighorn sheep. I think it was 3 years ago, up in northern Montana. And they're pretty relaxed up there. They're not hunted really and stuff. So we were photographing them. And if you just sit, they'll kind of rut around you and hang around and feed. And then they'll go and rut, headbutt. And you just let them do what they're going to do. You just kind of let them work you. But I was sitting below 7 or 8 of them. I was just peeking up and over the rocks, mainly getting a good angle.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that there was a giant laying on his horns in the background. And finally, my wife was like, hey, there's a big buck over here. Like, she glassed up, and it was kind of walking up the ridge towards us. And I was like, okay, let's go set up on it. And it was a 175 typical or so.
Uh-huh.
So we set up on it and got some quick photos, and then he boogied out. Once he actually seen us about 35 yards, 40 yards away, he boogied out. And then we came up and over on top of the rams. Oh, my goodness. When that ram picked his head up and looked at us, I couldn't believe it. I was like, you were that big sitting there the whole time?
Wow.
And then I'm just filling up cars, just click, 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 click.
Oh, yeah.
Back to back. I told myself I wasn't going to do this.
Dude, I turned into like a tourist, man. I'd be dead as fast as my finger could go, and hopefully it's probably even set up for bursts, do like 3 bursts, and I'd be taking pictures like nobody's business.
Oh man, I do the same thing. I tell myself every year I'm not gonna take 100 pictures of the same exact position. Yeah, until you see a giant ram or muley.
Yeah.
And you're like, sorry, but I'm getting every inch that you turn.
I was gonna say I'm that way even with my phone. Like we were hunting in Colorado last year, and I was watching this big bull moose, biggest moose I've seen in Colorado, and actually even like pictures and whatnot. He was huge. I wish I had your camera at the time. And dude, I took so many pictures of that thing. He's standing the exact same in probably 15 pictures, but I didn't even care. Like I'm just sitting there taking pictures as fast as I could with my stupid cell phone through my phone scope.
You're like, I don't care. I'll fill this phone up if I have to.
Exactly. I just wanted to, because he was honestly the biggest moose I've ever seen in my life, and so I was like, I'm never gonna see this again. I want like you said, I want every inch. Every time he turns, I want to see what he's got, and
right. You're like, I'm gonna be able to score this thing by the time I'm done.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd go through memory cards pretty quickly. I bet you do too. I'll bet you fill up some SD cards pretty quickly.
Oh man, yeah, I do. I have a problem.
Is that what your wife
I
buys
can't
you
keep
for
my finger off the
Christmas?
shutter. I wish.
I wish.
So, so I bring an external hard drive, and
Oh.
I have to clear my card every day. So when I was in Colorado, I drove back into Denver and stayed at my buddy's house,
Uh-huh.
and there was two things I left in the car: my headphones and my SD card case. And I must have forgot to close the door or lock the door that night, and I got broke into.
Oh
So
no.
thank goodness I had my external hard drive. So I had to clear my card every. I think at lunch every day I had to clear a 128 gigabyte card because you're just shooting
Holy
away. I mean,
crap, Courtney, that's
especially
a
when the
lot of
weather
pictures.
comes. Oh, it's terrible. I got a terrible problem.
Yeah, you do. We might have to send you to AA. My goodness.
I know. But then you stand next to guys like I don't. You've probably heard of Bill Allard,
Oh yeah.
and oh man, you should hear his camera. You're like, man, you're gonna burn that. Is that thing on fire? I
When
thought
you
I shot a lot.
do you like when you go take these pictures, are there a lot of do you see a lot of these big photographers when you go and do this? Or do you guys kind of congregate on certain areas?
So sometimes we do, and we'll plan to meet up. Like, hey, we got word of a good buck. Let's check it out, and we'll meet up. But a lot of times we'll miss each other by 2, 3, 4 days and
Ah.
stuff. Like, so I'll see Bill maybe once every 2, 3 years.
Uh-huh.
Jason, which is Untamed Images, I see same thing about every other year and stuff like that. So we don't see each other a whole lot, but a lot of times, not a lot of times, sometimes we're in the same general area. Big bucks move through an area and stuff like that. They always kind of rut in the same ridges and same area, so you kind of go and check them out. And I've gone in there and I've gotten one photo, like I think it was 2 years ago. People were photographing a big buck, and I think I got one photo of him. I seen him one time, and it was like 150 yards out. It didn't even, and I just did it for documentation to say, hey, I seen it at least.
Uh-huh. Wow.
So sometimes I don't see the bucks that some of these other guys see, and
And vice versa, I'm
sometimes we'll
sure.
go there at different times of year, or sometimes we'll make a certain trip, like a special trip, just to photograph like the big bulls in Colorado and stuff. Sometimes we'll make a trip down there.
Yeah. Yeah, we were up in Rocky Mountain National Park last year. Was it last year or 2 years ago during the rut? And there's that famous bull that's up there. I think they call him Bruno or
Bruno, yeah,
yeah.
yep,
And we're parked on the side of the road. And we're lined up there with cars after car. And I look down there and there's just all these wildlife photographers with their big cameras and big lenses. Heck, you could have even been there. I don't even know, but yeah, I know Lauren with Good Bull. He was
yep.
there that day, but I mean there were so many. I was like, I wonder if these guys like communicate with each other and say, hey, here's this big bull. You need to come check this out, or maybe like, hey, I saw this guy this year. He might be there next year. We got to go check him out, kind of a thing. So I wondered if you guys had some communication there.
Yeah, sometimes we'll keep in contact. Bruno, he's pretty well known, so everybody. I haven't photographed him in 4 years.
Oh
He
wow.
had his broken too, so I haven't photographed elk actually in I think 3 years. I went to Alberta, Canada, and photographed the elk rut, and oh my goodness, that's a blast. That's
Oh,
a must do for everybody.
that would be
There's
fun.
some big bulls there.
Oh man, you have a lot of those pictures up on your page.
I do. A lot of those ones that are like some of the recent ones I posted are like with the breath and stuff like that.
Uh huh.
The more non-typical bulls are usually from Canada that I photographed,
Okay.
and it's only a 12-hour drive, 11 and a half hour drive for me to
Oh
start getting
jeez.
into those big bulls. But those bulls, they're a little bit more aggressive up there. I don't know what they do to them up there in Canada, but man, there's some mean bulls up there.
Yeah, that one
You
where
really got to watch. You got to watch their ears and their posture. If they start swaying a little bit, time to back up. You're a little close.
that guy's bugling, and you can see the breath coming out of him. I mean, that's such a sweet shot. Gosh, I love it.
Yeah, that was a cool bull. That one, I think that was the bull I photographed the most.
Well, he
There
was.
was another one that had two flyers, double flyers, and stuff, and I photographed him for a day. I didn't see him every day, but the one with the one single flyer, I think that's the one that you're talking about with the breath. Yeah, I
Yeah,
photographed him. I think every day at least.
yeah. You've got quite a few pictures up of him. I mean, he's so cool because he's really dark antlered, and then he's got the really white tips, and so I mean, just a really
Yeah,
cool looking bull, man. Um,
so that's a trip everybody should do.
yeah, yeah, that really is. I think there's a few trips everybody. In fact, I think I need to go with you on these trips and make sure I have a tag in my pocket. That way you can shoot them with the camera, and then I always say I need to follow a wildlife photographer around because you guys seem to find the biggest animals anybody can find. I don't know how you guys do it.
We find some pretty good ones.
Yeah,
I think that dropper is one of the bigger ones I've ever photographed, and then Double D from Utah, Salt Lake, was one of the other bigger ones that I photographed. Yeah, he was a big buck.
Do you go to Antelope Island frequently?
I haven't been there. I went there 2 years ago. I photographed that buck that they call Limpy.
Uh-huh.
I photographed him 2 years ago over there. I was actually driving back from a hunt in Colorado, and I was like, told my buddy, I was like, hey, we got to hit Antelope Island for 2 hours. Give me 2 hours. Yeah. I want to try and find this one single buck, and it was Limpy, that one that has trash on each side, all over the place. So it was probably an hour into driving around, glassing, and all of a sudden I'm like, there he is. He's about 1,000 yards out.
Jeez.
So me and my buddy, we took off running across the sagebrush and stuff like that, and we ended up catching him walking right at us I think he was about 60 yards facing right at me. And all of a sudden, after that, fog set in, and I never seen him again.
Wow.
So I got one shot of him that was actually a pretty decent shot, and never seen him again, and went home. Drove the 12 hours home.
Hey, it was worth it, though, for the one shot, though. I mean,
oh, it was.
He's a beast.
I was so excited.
Yeah, you had the one. Sorry, I'm getting so distracted. I'm looking at your pictures right now. You had one that was had trash coming off both sides. Had one big drop tine on his right side. iGuard had like 3 different spikes coming off of it. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, that was Colorado. Not this last season, but the season before.
Okay.
And I don't know what happened to him. I tried finding him this year. I know a couple other guys tried looking for him, and no one ever seen him. So I have no idea what happened to him.
What if he didn't make it through winter or something?
I talked to a guy, and he said he did, but I don't. When they're in March, it's hard. They don't have antlers, so it's hard to tell what buck is what.
Yeah.
I don't think he actually made it through the winter, like you were saying. I don't think he did.
Yeah, I'll bet so. He's actually the one that I always like steal a picture for when I do a podcast. I post a thing on Instagram and Facebook about the podcast. That's actually the one that I stole for years of my podcast that we're recording right now that I want to post up on because he's just ridiculous. He's a monster.
Yeah, he's probably the biggest buck I've ever photographed.
Man, he's huge. Hey, you kind of shared. I love the tip of carrying a external hard drive with you. Do you have any other like tips, tricks that you use that other people may want to borrow from you?
Yeah, like always carry an external hard drive. Keep the cards clear. Mm-hmm. The worst thing is being a mile or mile and a half from your truck and film that card.
Yeah.
The other thing is keep a battery in your pocket, a warm battery. Because that's the other thing is I was photographing a big bull over in Montana, and I jumped out, ran up to the ridge because I seen that this bull was making a beeline across the ridge line and was hitting like a pinch point in the tree. So I was like, once he hits the timber, I wasn't going to get photos of him. And my camera was dead. I got one photo and it died. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I'm about 400 or 500 yards from the truck. So I had to run all the way back, and I'm yelling at my wife. I'm like, I need a battery. Throw me it. She didn't know what I was saying. So I ended up having to go back to the truck and get a battery. I didn't get the shots that I wanted. So carry an extra battery in your pocket. Keep it warm because in those cold days, especially November, December, when you're photographing, your battery's going to die a lot quicker than it would if it was hot summer, August, September. So that's another tip that I highly recommend. Then the other thing is rain gear. Oh my goodness. I don't know how many times the weather didn't forecast rain and I sat there and got drenched. And then I'm trying to keep my camera gear dry.
Right.
So I end up taking off a jacket and throwing it over my sweater and throwing it over my camera gear. I don't know if you have time for that story.
You need a rain jacket for your camera and for yourself.
Yeah, and they make those neoprenes. I can't remember who makes them, but they make neoprenes that we put on our lenses and our camera gear. So if it does get grainy. You can
Uh-huh.
throw those on. They're waterproof.
Nice. Does it?
Lens coat is what makes those.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think lens coat makes a thing that like covers everything for you.
Yep, and those are highly recommended. They're worth, I think they're 90, $100, and they're worth every penny. Because
Oh,
that's the last thing you want is your camera gear getting rained on, then it fogs up, molds. So
oh, really? It'll mold?
yeah, if you get moisture in them and then you stick them in a vehicle and don't ever like actually take care of them, they could mold inside if they got moisture inside. And
Oh,
that's the
wow.
other thing is really if so. I mean, I hate telling people put your camera gear in your car overnight, but if you're in super cold weather and you're going to go photograph in the morning, try and keep that camera gear as close as you can to the coldest weather you can. Because if not, you get from a hot vehicle. So I keep it in the trunk
Uh-huh.
usually. If you're in a hot vehicle and you jump out to shoot with your camera, it's going to fog up. There goes your shot opportunity.
Good
So
point.
that's another thing is you just got to be careful. And then, so if you're shooting, say, so a lot of the times, another tip is a lot of these wildlife, they'll run once you get out. So shooting from a car, like your window or something like that. But that comes with, if it's cold outside, turn the cold air on in your car. The last thing you want is the heat to be on and you're picking up heat rays as they go out the window in front of your lens. So stick your lens out as far as you can from the car,
Is
the
there?
window, or what's that?
I was gonna say, is there a good way to stabilize that as you're? I mean, do you rest it on the mirror if you can, or do you just freehand it and just hold it?
Yeah, or I'll pick up the windshield a little bit to where it's level, and then I just rest it on the windshield.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I recommend turning on the cold air for at least a little bit just to get the heat rays out of the car. If not, you'll just pick up heat rays and you'll be like, what the heck? All these images are soft. Well, you just picked up heat rays from your car. Or if you can step out a little bit, open your car door and step and like kneel down. Heat rays go up, so they'll go up and over your back. And if you're kneeled down, you're closer to the ground and you won't pick up those heat rays.
Oh man, dude, keep going. This is great. Keep going with these tips. This has been. No, this is stuff I
So
don't
those are
even
just like
ever
quick
think
tips
about.
because if people are driving, because I mean, when you go to like national parks, you're always like, oh, don't get out of your vehicle, don't get out of your vehicle. There's a grizzly on the side, or I mean, there's just a pile up of vehicles. So if you can't get out of your vehicle, just try and do those tips. Even if you can step out of your vehicle 2 feet, kneel down, just to get rid of those heat rays or anything that would obstruct from the car to the actual wildlife. And yeah, I just highly recommend keeping it in the colder elements. If it's going to be cold outside, keep your camera in colder elements, because then you're not getting that fog. Because I've had it where it took five to 10 minutes where the fog kind of finally cleared up off my lens. So I couldn't
Wow.
shoot. I could sit there and wipe my lens and it'd fog up immediately because my lens was so hot and it was so cold outside.
Well, and most of the hunters listening to this podcast are going to understand this because your binoculars do the same thing, or your spotting scope. I mean, I've done that. Grabbed my spotting scope, jumped out in Colorado, and it's -10 degrees, and I can't see anything. It just fogs up, and you just sit
Yep.
there.
I have done the same thing, especially binos, because you always want them on your chest
Yep.
at the ready.
Yep.
Well, guess what? The heat's going right at your chest. So you get up, you put them out the window, and they fog up. And you're like, well, that was a clear picture.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh man, dude, those are amazing tips and tricks. I think there's a lot of that stuff I'm sure that you just kind of learn as you go and kind of over time. But man, those are like priceless because I don't think of those kind of things. I'm sure most people don't think of those kind of things.
No, a lot. I mean, I still catch myself doing it to this day, especially with my binos, because I want them at the ready at all times.
Yeah.
Now I keep them in the back seat, so I'll have to reach and grab them. But at least they're away from the heater. They will tend to fog up, but not near as long as they would. You're looking at several seconds compared to maybe a minute or two with your binos.
Yeah.
So
When you take pictures with your camera, do you look through the eye hole or do you use the screen? I know there's a better word for it than eye hole. I just can't think of what it is. So.
yeah, I can't even think of what it's called either. I always look through it. It's just it's more realistic for me. That's why I like it. I mean, I could hold it down and look at the screen, but it's not the same as looking through it and being like right there. You're like, oh my goodness, this is right here, right in front of me.
Yeah.
Compared to looking at the ground at a screen and the wildlife, you're not even looking at the wildlife. You're looking at your screen. I like to be looking right at them, that eye level or down on my knee.
It's so funny that you say that because like a lot of times when I'm when I'm scouting and glassing, I'll put a phone scope up on it and just have the screen on there. But I feel the same way when I see an animal. I don't want to look at it through my phone screen. I want to look at it through my binos. It makes it, yeah, like you say, it's more real, I guess, that the animal really is there rather than on a screen.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the point of view and the perception, I think, for us. I mean, everybody wants to be like, oh, I got to get footage of it, which is awesome. I do the same thing. I'm like, I got to get footage through the phone scope. And then I'm like, oh, okay, got what I wanted, back through the eye hole.
Yep, exactly.
Then I can actually watch every movement.
Do you do a lot of video, or most of the stuff I see that you post is pictures? I know you post your trail cam videos, but do you do a lot of video through your camera?
No, I don't. I haven't mastered it.
Oh, gotcha.
I am terrible. My girlfriend, or not my girlfriend, my wife, she will. I'll hand her like the camera and say, hey, video if you want. And she'll like do video and stuff. But I'm just terrible at it. I'll be like, well, great. I just got that on video, but I can't do anything with it. I'm like, that would have been an awesome still.
They take amazing video, don't they? Those DSLRs do a pretty good job videoing, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I'm not very good at it. I'm shaky. And like on the Sony, it zooms in like 10 times. So you get that sharpness. Uh-huh. And I'm like, okay, I'm looking inside this deer's ear. Now, how do I unzoom this thing so I can actually see what I'm recording? Which once you start push record, then it records. But I'm just terrible at it. I always tell myself I'm going to record. I'm going to make like a 3-minute promo, like just a cool, fun video for people to check out. And I just never do it.
Dude, you can make videos and put them on YouTube. I'd watch that crap all day long, man. So I'm in the corner of you videoing because I would love it.
I'm going to try. Once I go to Colorado this year, I'm going to try and record a bit, see if it actually happens or not. I think I get maybe 3 minutes total of video ever on each trip. I videoed that grizzly on that elk kill last year.
Oh,
and that was pretty much the only video I did.
Grizzly 719 or whatever his name was.
Yeah, what was that? 791.
791, is that what it was? Yeah.
That big male on that elk kill.
Dude, that was
so I videoed
amazing.
Just sitting there. That was pretty cool. I didn't get to actually see the kill, nothing like that, but we got to see him, and this is all he did when I was there. He slept all day. He would lay on it, chase the crows away, and that was it.
He never ate on it or anything while you were there?
No, he just like put more dirt over it.
Interesting.
Just kept covering it up.
Such a weird animal. My gosh.
I know. I'm like, man, this thing is. He probably ate so much overnight. He's so lazy.
That's true. He is. Actually, I'm looking at a picture that you posted of him right now. That's such a cool picture. Yeah, he's got a lot of dirt covering that elk. My gosh.
Yeah, he does. I think he was mainly saving. He ate so much, and he was probably saving up because he knew he was going to be fighting off and fending off the wolves and other grizzlies that actually ended up coming in the day after I left. They came in and hung around a few different times, so people got some pretty cool photos of the wolf pack in there. I can't remember exactly what wolf pack it is.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember seeing pictures of that wolf pack came in on that, and he was fighting them off all the time. Yeah.
So I think he was conserving some energy for that. Not just being lazy, but he knew he was going to be fending off some other predators.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's awesome. Hey, well, the last question I have for you is something that was kind of brought up as I talked to people is, like, what do you do with these pictures? Do you take them and put them on canvases and sell them? Do you, like, what's your purpose or even other photographers' purposes in taking these pictures? What do you guys do with them?
So, yeah, I'll put them on canvas, sell them metal, acrylic, and stuff like that. And that's a lot more local. I have sold a couple across the state, the Pacific Northwest, and a few back east. But a lot of them are local people. I'll do a donation or two a year to foundations and stuff for auction. Mm-hmm. And then magazines is another one, getting picked up for magazines. I don't really go after looking for them. Some of them will reach out, but there's a few that I've reached out and get some of my photos in. But yeah, so getting published in magazines is a couple times a year, 4 or 5 times a year, maybe more than that. It just depends. But yeah, and it makes it just enough to pay for a few of my trips.
Yeah.
So the wife likes that.
If somebody wanted to reach out to you and say, "Hey, I'd like to purchase some of your stuff," I mean, say someone in Colorado. I'm using this because I might have a similar situation. You know, they know one of the animals that you take pictures of, and said, "Hey, would you do a canvas for it?" Would you be cool with that? Would you be up to doing that?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
most definitely.
awesome. Because I think
Yep. I try and get people taken care of as best as I can.
nice. Well, in my office. This is totally on a personal level. No one, everyone listening doesn't even care about this. But like in my office, I have canvases of different, um, wildlife. But it's not really personal to me. But if it was something of yours, I think that would be really cool, and I'm sure everybody else would be that same way. And so,
Oh, that'd be awesome.
yeah, I'm personally gonna have you hook me up with some pictures for my office walls. But I think it'd be cool for. I know there's gonna be a lot of people listening to this that are interested in having stuff of yours on their wall as well. So if you're okay with it, I think it'd be cool if people could reach out and get that stuff from
Oh
you.
yeah, and I appreciate it. Yeah, I just tell everybody if you can get a hold of me on Instagram, send me a direct message, personal message, and I get back to you as fast as I can. I probably spend too much time on that thing, but yeah, I try and get back to you within a few hours. If I'm out like hunting or even photographing, it'll take me a day or two, but I reach back out to everybody and try and get them taken care of if I can, if it's the right print and stuff like that, the right size for them.
Nice. I'll give you that. You are very responsive on social media, so I was impressed. Anytime I message you, you're like, boom, right on it. So thank you for that.
No problem. Don't tell my wife that. She probably like, see, you spend way too much time on this thing.
Now I just need you to get a TikTok page with all the videos that you're going to start doing, because then my whole day would be shot right there.
Oh man, I'm thinking about making one for like the trail cam videos and stuff. And
You should.
I have thousands of videos, and I'm like, how do I go through all these things? So I'll maybe make like a 2, 3, 10, 20 second, 30-second videos and start posting them up.
You should.
So some of the bigger bulls.
I would love that. I mean, I love your pictures. Don't get me wrong, Courtney. I absolutely love your pictures. But man, if you had some videos on there too, like I said, you'd kill my entire day.
See, then your wife would probably start hating me.
That's true. You might get a phone call. She might say, "Hey, you need to knock this off because you're taking all my husband's time."
Yeah. She'll be like, "Oh, that's just coming out of your hunting time."
That's right. Exactly.
Counting hours.
You're not gonna go check
No, I
trail
will.
cameras
I need
today.
to get better. What's that?
Oh, sorry. What did you say?
I need to get better at taking video and start posting some videos up. I posted a video that did pretty good. It was kind of funny. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, we were probably harassing the elk," and I see people posting or commenting on it. And if they only knew the true story, that bull came from like 400 or 500 yards away, and the herd of cows came like feeding towards us, and we were in like a what are those old Western fences, those wooden ones that are like a triangle? We were actually sitting in that, photographing other elk and bulls, and then that giant bull come right at us, and then he actually ended up charging the fence. He was still 5-10 feet, probably 5 feet away, with the fence in between us.
Oh my gosh! Did he
and
actually?
I took off running. Nobody knows. What's that?
I was gonna say I saw that video. Did he actually hit the fence when he charged that fence?
I don't know. Not a lot of people know, but my wife's the one that videoed that because I was running. I knew when that bull was swaying, I knew what that meant. And I was like, it's not going to take him much to go through that. So I was running.
Oh my gosh!
See, I'm not dumb. I'll run and distance myself. She stayed. Her and another guy, his name was Dallas. We met out there, and he stayed there and stood until that was him. He turned around and ran. That was him running. And I'm like, nope, see ya. I was 40 yards away looking back. I'm like, I'm good.
I remember that video when you posted that up, and I was like, holy crap, like he was coming at you on that. So I'm glad.
Yeah, I was like, I see what he's doing. He's starting to sway. Yeah, see ya. I got the pictures I needed. But yeah, some those bulls in Canada, that was a Canada bull. Man, those things are mean. They don't like people around. Man. But we were, like I said, 400 yards away, and the other herd, we were 65 yards away, well within range of being fine and not really having elk run around or chasing people and harassing them. Mm-hmm. We were just keeping our distance, sitting there, and this mean bull comes out of nowhere, and starts acting like that. So it was kind of comical reading some of the responses on it and stuff like that. It's like, gosh, if people only knew that we were actually just kind of, and we weren't the only ones. There was probably 15 other people that were just taking pictures with their cell phone that did the same thing. They were just sitting there.
Wow.
But that bull was pretty well known for being aggressive. His harem would cross the road and stuff, and he would go through and actually hit vehicles. That's how aggressive he was. So yeah,
Jeez.
He wasn't.
Well, they put in the water up there
very,
in Canada.
I know. I was like, I thought we were going to go up there and just have a blast of a time. The bulls are going to be relaxed like the Colorado bulls.
Yep.
And it was the exact opposite. I was like, nope, these things are a little bit more mean.
Man, that's awesome. I remember that video that when you posted that. I was like, oh, geez, I'd have crapped my pants. Let's be honest.
I know. But yeah, I should take more video. A lot of them are cell phone videos just because I'm usually taking stills with my camera. But this year I should really break down and take some video with the 4K and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the corner of that. Like I said, I love your photos, and don't get me wrong, I spend probably more time than I better admit on this podcast looking at your pictures. But man, if you had videos on top of that, gosh, I'd be lost. So. Oh shoot! Well, Courtney, I appreciate you.
You're not the only one that asked that.
Oh, good. I'm glad there's other people that feel the same way I do. Like I said, if you made a YouTube video, oh my goodness gracious, I'd be lost. So.
Oh man, I will. I'll make one this year and we'll post it up.
Nice. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on and sharing some tips, sharing some information about wildlife photography. Like I said, there's a lot of people that are, I mean, all of us hunters love it. We absolutely love seeing the pictures that you take and enjoy every minute of it. And there's so many questions that come around it, of what equipment to use, what tips and tricks do you recommend? If I'm just getting into it, what should I do? And so I really appreciate the information that you've shared with us on this podcast. I will definitely put links below to both those websites that we talked about, so that everybody can hop on there and look at the different products on there. And then, just appreciate you taking the time to share any of all this information with us. Before we go, though, if you wouldn't mind, if you'd share like your Instagram handle, Facebook page, so that people can reach out and get a hold of you.
Yeah, so my Instagram is Courtney Nally Photography. There's no U in the Courtney. That's where everybody gets it messed up. And my Facebook is just Courtney Nally. You can reach out to me on both. Instagram, I'm usually a little bit more responsive. Spend a little bit more time on there. But even if you see me out in the field, feel free to come up, ask what I use, ask me any question. I tell everybody ask. It's better to ask than trial and error.
Yeah.
We've already done that. We've gone through it, so we can try and give you the best knowledge from past experience. So, I mean, and I'm just not just me. You could reach out to any of the photographers. Most of them will let you know what they're using and how to use it, or give you some tips and tricks that they use for different kinds of wildlife. I mean, if you're a birder, reach out to birding forums and stuff like that. But yeah, if you want to get a hold of me, just Instagram, Facebook, direct message me, personal message me, or even in the field. Like I said, I'm a nice guy.
Yeah.
I don't bite.
Courtney's awesome. He is. There's a reason that he's on this podcast tonight, because he is very open and will answer any questions that you have. I mean, we've worked with Courtney for a long time, and both with eHunter and then also with the Winter Range Foundation, and so he's a wealth of information, and yeah, he's a good guy. Don't be too afraid to ask questions, and you may regret that, Courtney, because now you might have people blowing up your DMs. But
hey, if you see me cancel it, then you know what happened.
Yep, exactly.
I'm just kidding.
We'll blame eHunter for that. Oh shoot! Well, cool, man. Well, I'll let you back to your family and everything that's going on there back at home. But again, I appreciate you jumping on recording this with me.
Yeah, anytime. I appreciate you reaching out and getting me on the podcast. That was awesome. I appreciate it.
Let's do this again soon, okay?
Definitely. Let's do it after the season.
Yeah.
They'll have some new big deer.
Let's do it for sure. Let's just plan it.
Sounds good to me.
Cool. All right, man. Well, thank you. Appreciate you. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you here later.
See ya.
All right. Bye.
Bye.